one of the ways that you can start doing the work, one is creating your budget and sticking with it, right? And then updating and tweaking your budget. Fun fact about your budget, by the way, it takes about 90 days for people to start getting comfortable with the idea and the concept of budgeting. 3 months, y'all. So some of y'all you'll be doing a budget for 1 month and you go over in some categories and you're like, forget it, I'm done. And you don't come back to it for weeks, months, years, and it's just a mess. But you have to stick with it, right? So we have to be committed to doing the work. We have to be committed to making adjustments. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Grow Beyond the Budget. And I am really excited for this episode because this is going to be laying some really important foundational groundwork for the rest of the podcast. And so in today's episode, we are going to dive into the Grow framework, which is the title of this podcast, which is a signature framework that I take all of my clients through. And it is a process that is really effective for helping you see beyond the budget so that you can use your money more effectively as you start to think about things in a new lens, in a new perspective. And so if you look at the Grow and Grow Beyond the Budget for the podcast, it is actually an acronym, and it stands for G, goal setting. R is for your recognition, and O is for your outline, your opportunities, and your options. The W is for doing the work and your way forward. So I am going to dive into all of these different letters and what they stand for, and what that process really looks like, because it's, again, really important for us as we start to think differently about our money to start thinking about all of these things holistically, and what do we need to actually start to do in order to start seeing some shifts and changes in our finances. So starting with the G, right? Of course, naturally, we start with a goal. We have to figure out what it is we're working towards. And usually what happens when I ask people what their goals are, and maybe it's just because I'm a money coach, but usually when I ask people what their goals are, they'll say things like they want to get out of debt, they want to manage their money better, they want to buy a house, they want to fix their credit. They say these things, right? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with those goals. But even with that, I want you to think even bigger. I want you to take a step back. Okay, get out of the forest, or out of the trees. I want you to see the forest. Get away from the puzzle, like take a step back so you can take in the full picture, right? And I want you to really start to think about what you want your life to look like. If you had a magic wand and could design your entire life, what do you want it to look like? Starting with, where do you see yourself in the next 10 to 15 to 20 years from now? Like, if you could think in the future and think about what you want your life to look like, what does that look like? What is that picture? And so there's a couple of things that I do with my clients to help them really start to figure out what their goals are for their life, for their finances, so that we can start making these things align and work together. So one of the first things that we do is like a values assessment. Let's just take an inventory and an assessment of what your core values are. What are some of the things that are most important to you? Because your values are really a guiding light and a guiding force for your decisions and all of the things that you do. So if, for example, your values are family, like mine are, then how that shows up in my life is I love to host gatherings for my family. Every year for Christmas, I do a huge, I call it Breakfast at Tiffany, which it really is like an open house, because it starts as breakfast, but then it goes into brunch, then we go to lunch, then we do dinner, right? So it turns into a whole day where my family is just in and out of my house on Christmas, but it's something that I absolutely love. But I factor that into my finances because, especially with the last couple of years in inflation, paying for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a large group of people is a huge cost, right? But that is something that is so important to me. Creating those memories, having those moments with my family is super important. So I knew that that was something that I need to make sure that I prioritize in my finances. If travel is something that is important to you, then that might look like you making sure that you have trips regularly plan. So there's ways that you can align your finances to those values. You can, have travel credit cards where you're earning points and rewards so that you can travel more often. You can make sure that your job is flexible with your PTO so that you're not compromising your time in order to make sure that you keep your job security, right? There's ways that your values will show up and impact and influence your finances, and we have to find that alignment. There are some other values that are a little bit more abstract. So I had someone recently ask me, like, what if happiness is your value? And I asked her, what does she do to what brings her happiness, right? What does that mean for her? And when she started to think about it, she talked about like ease and flow. And so, okay, if happiness for you is this ease, it is not this hustle and grind culture that we live in, then for you, that is maybe prioritizing your investment so that you can reach financial security so you could become work optional. Right. And so that is, once you start to realize how your values are connected to your finances, it's really important for us to have that data. So when we're starting to create your budget and your plans and all of these different things, we know that these things are non-negotiable, and we have a guide for what is most important to us so that we don't feel like we're sacrificing everything that we love and feel deprived in the process. And then this also gives us a guide or like what can be eliminated, right? If this isn't super important, then why am I spending my money here? And so it really works in multiple ways. After we get your values, then it's time to start really thinking about like who you want to be. If you get to choose the person that you are, what kind of person do you want to be in this world? How do you want to show up? For me, the person that I wanted to show up as is impactful, confident, powerful woman who shares her story, her experiences with the world, who guides others in their journeys, who is a student as well as a teacher. These are things that I wanted to be. I also want to make sure that I am a safe space for people, including my children, right? I'm very, very conscious and mindful of how I show up as a mother, as a wife. Am I creating an environment that is nurturing and loving? I know that when I am stressed out at work, or if I am working on something in my business, that doesn't always necessarily bring me that peace and make that safe, allow me to have or to be that safe haven for my friends and family. And so I know that I need to align the work that I do, my schedule, and all of these different things around different times, and making sure that these things are priority. And so what kind of person do you want to show up in this world as? Do you want to be a generous person? Do you want to, start an organization or a nonprofit? Like, what do you want to do with your life? If you get to live and leave a legacy, how do you want people to remember you, and who is that person, right? You get to choose this identity and start to walk into it. We also look at your purpose. I love Marshawn Evans Daniels has a book called Believe Bigger. It is in this pile because it's one of my favorite books. I've read this book over and over because as a believer, as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of times where there's a lot of gray, and I feel, there's different emotions. We don't have to get into that. We can talk about that book another time. But in her book, it is a purpose guide, and she describes your purpose as the natural impact that your life has on others. And when I read that, that was so freeing for me, because for a long time, I felt like your purpose was this big, scary, like monster that you had to like dig and find. And it was like trying to get away from you, and you were trying always chasing it, trying to figure out what it was. And that it had to be this really enormous thing. And that it might mean that you're up on stage and on platforms and pedestals. And I, like, for a while was running from purpose because of what I thought it meant. But when she broke it down as just your life's natural impact on others, right? Now you take that in combination with your vision, or with your values that we've already identified, the person that you want to be, and now looking at the natural impact that your life will have on someone else's, you are now walking and living in purpose. What is your purpose? What is the natural impact that your life has on others? Who is connected to you that is impacted by your lives? And so for a lot of us especially who are mothers, one of the quickest answers is our children, right? Our children are naturally impacted by our lives. So how we show up, how we live our lives will directly influence how they live theirs. right? Our spouses, our friends, people who are connected to us, people who see us, especially in this digital age where we live on social media and we show people pieces of our lives. We have impact and influence a lot more than we have before, when, we just had to stick with the people who were in our immediate vicinity. And so when you start to think about your natural impact that your life has on others, you can start to show up differently, because you know that your life will impact and influence someone else's. If you haven't read the book, I highly recommend it. At this point, sis needs to give me like some sort of like affiliate link or kickback, because I have talked about this book so much. It really has truly changed my life. She also has a devotional that goes with it. Highly, highly, highly recommend, especially if like that whole like premise of purpose and trying to figure out where you're find your footing and your direction in life. This is an amazing book for that. And then lastly, your vision, right? Like, what do you see? When I asked you earlier, in 10, 15, 20 years from now, where do you see yourself? What did that look like? Okay, there is both scientific and spiritual proof that having a vision is powerful. The Bible tells us to write the vision and make it plain. We need to be able to see it. We need to be able to speak it. We need to be able to write it down. I'm a huge advocate and proponent for having vision boards and having, affirmations and all the things that you want to manifest with God, that you want to come to fruition. And there's also scientific proof. Your brain is a problem solving machine. So if you tell your brain that I want to achieve X, Y, and Z, your brain is going to start going into overdrive to figure out solutions to this now problem that it has in this gap of where you are now to where you want to be. And so it's really important for you to take all of these things into consideration when you're thinking about your goals. It's not just, and I'm not saying that having a house and fixing your credit and all of these things aren't things that you need to do, but that isn't the large vision, and that isn't the larger goal. So I really again want you to take a step back and think about, where do you see your life in the grand scheme of things, and then how do we start to align your finances to support that life? Okay, we're going to start to reverse engineer. So now that we have the goals, I want you to now look at the next level, which is R. R stands for recognition. And what recognition is all about, is self-awareness. And we have to be aware of what is happening in order for us to make progress. And so in the first step, we're looking at where we want to go. And then in the second step, we're looking at where we are right now. Where are we? And so there's two parts to bringing recognition and awareness around where you are. There is the internal, right? I need you to assess where you are with your mindset and your body, in your spirit and your soul and your headspace and your heart space. How are you feeling towards your finances? How are you feeling about your life and your money and all of these things that you want to accomplish? Are you feeling limited or defeated? Are you feeling like money is intimidating and scary? Is it something that you're very uncomfortable with? Is there a money story that you have inherited that you need to unlearn? A lot of us were born into, if you're like me, a lot of us were born into households where we weren't explicitly taught about finance, right? And so a lot of the things that we learned about money were caught and not necessarily taught. And so if you were in that environment, for me, I saw my grandmas, both sides, always had cash. They always had. My grandma on my dad's side, she kept it in a Tootsie Roll jar. My grandma on my mama's side, she had those cute little bank envelopes, and she would pull out her hundreds. And so I saw them spending money. I didn't see them budgeting. I didn't see them like thinking about a plan. It didn't seem, as from a child's perspective, like there was any sort of intention that went behind it. And so when I went into adulthood, if I had cash, like that money was just gone. Like I had to spend it. Like cash did not hold value to me, because that's how I saw other people use money in the past. And so again, we have to start to take awareness and inventory of what some of those internal stories are about money. If you saw your family members or friends have conflict and issues over finances, then that might be showing up in your life today. So I saw my parents fight about money a lot before they got divorced. And so when I went into my marriage, anytime my husband would bring up anything about money, I would immediately get defensive because I was ready to start a fight. Okay. He will vouch for that. But those were internal things that I caught growing up, that I took into adulthood, that were still stories and beliefs that I carried into my marriage and adulthood that weren't serving me. So we have to bring attention and awareness to what some of those experiences were so that we can start to move past them. Again, especially if they aren't serving us. There might be some things that you have learned that were from your past that are very, very helpful and that are serving you. We want to keep those, okay? But we're talking about the ones that are not serving us. So pay attention to all of the things that you learned. Did you have a financially stable, good financial role model in your life? What was that person's life like? What gems did they leave you? A lot of times they might have like said something to you and you're like, okay, let me hurry up and or let me bring back up those nuggets and those gems that person left me so that I can cherish those, because not everybody in your family or your network was a bad influence, right? So picking up on all of those experiences from your past, and that's your money story. But then I want you to continue to go on with the money identity that you've created. I want you to start thinking about what experiences beyond your childhood and adolescence have you had that has enforced an identity that maybe or may not be serving you. And so if you are, I hear it all the time and we see it all the time, it's like, I'm bad with money, or you might not even say it anymore because now we are a lot more mindful of our language, but you might be thinking it, oh, I messed up on my budget again. So I knew I couldn't do this, right? Or there's no point. I know I'm just going to mess it up, right? Like, what is that internal dialogue, and what experiences are reinforcing those beliefs and that identity? And so, one of the things that I see when people are trying to get their money together and they start budgeting or they start making these financial shifts, they'll go from, spending $1,000 a month on restaurants and eating out to trying to cut back to like $500, $200, making these extreme, like these dramatic shifts in their finances. And usually when that happens, they cannot maintain that. And then that reinforces the identity that they've created and that negative voice. So it's important for you to make sure that you're paying attention to what experiences have I had as an adult that is reinforcing this identity, and what experiences do I have that disprove it, right? The fact that you are an adult that pays your bills on time, that proves that you are good with your money. Okay. So find any evidence also that you are not as bad with money as you might have thought or believed. Find any evidence and proof that you are able to achieve your goals, that you are a go-getter, that you are able to accomplish great things, so that you can make sure that you stay committed to your vision. All right, so that's the mindset and the internal part of the recognition. But then even beyond that, now we have to get into the finances. And so, listen, we have to do all of that groundwork before we even start looking at the numbers. And this was something that I learned very early on in my business, is that we do not start with the financial, I don't even call them audits anymore. I call them like assessments, because I do want you to think of it like a checkup. I don't want you to think of it like an audit, because it has like a negative like connotation to it. Like usually when we're thinking of audits, we're thinking of like the IRS coming in to audit you, and they're looking for something wrong. They're looking to catch you up. So we don't even want to look at your finances as an audit. We want to look at it as an assessment. We are really just taking an inventory, a checkup, trying to figure out, okay, where is our starting line? What are we starting with? And so that includes looking at your bank statements and your credit card statements and seeing, where is my money being spent? What money is coming in? What money is going out? What money is staying? What money do I have in savings? How are my investments doing? Do I have the proper life insurance policies? Like really taking a holistic look at what is happening in my finances. So now that I know where I'm going, I can really start to see where I am. So in the next phase, you can start to create your outline and look at the options and opportunities that you have. And so in this part, this is where you really start to get your strategy and your plan in motion. And this is the part where you start to create some of these milestones and these different little like sub goals or mini goals within them. And so I know that the first part is called goal setting because, I wanted to stick with the grow and the goals. But really, when I think about the first step, that is your overarching vision. I want you to again, the forest from the trees. It's the whole picture. And then, or like a puzzle, the whole puzzle. And then I want you to think about your individual goals that you create in the outline phase as just that goals. These are little tiny pieces of the puzzle that you need to make that whole puzzle complete. And so that is where you would put things like fixing your credit and buying a house and all of these other things that are paying off your debt, getting better with money. All of those things are categories that will fall under this whole entire picture, but those are tiny things that we can like track and measure and figure out like how to create these milestones. And so that is what you start to do in the outline phase. That is when you start to create your money management system, right? Creating your budget and figuring out how you will use your money strategically and intentionally, how you can start to align your finances with the life that you want, the life with your values and the vision and the person that you want to be. How can you start to align your finances, the money that you have today, not the money you have tomorrow, the money that you have right now? How can we start to align that with the goals and the vision that we have? Okay. And then the last part of the framework, it is for doing the work. And this is the work in your way forward. And so when we are thinking about making any sort of shifts and changes in our finances, I want us to understand that it is going to be work. I want you to be very honest and truthful with yourself that this is a process. This is a journey. This is not an event. This is not a one-time thing and then I am set for life. This is a constant moving and progression towards the things in the life that you want. It's not an event, it's a journey. So you have to make sure that you are in it for the long haul. One of the ways that you can start doing the work, one is creating your budget and sticking with it, right? And then updating and tweaking your budget. Fun fact about your budget, by the way, it takes about 90 days for people to start getting comfortable with the idea and the concept of budgeting. 3 months, y'all. So some of y'all you'll be doing a budget for 1 month and you go over in some categories and you're like, forget it, I'm done. And you don't come back to it for weeks, months, years, and it's just a mess. But you have to stick with it, right? So we have to be committed to doing the work. We have to be committed to making adjustments. Another book that is on behind me that I absolutely love is Atomic Habits. In that book, he talks about making small changes over time to create lifestyle shifts that are in alignment with what you are already doing. One of the reasons why creating new systems and habits is difficult is because you try to overhaul everything at the same time instead of making these smaller interval shifts that will give you the results and progress over time. So back to that example of the groceries. I do not let my clients do that. Okay. One, I help them understand why their grocery budget or their restaurant budget is the way that it is. Like a lot of times we don't even recognize, okay, like I am eating out a lot because I am working a lot. I just picked up a new project at work. My kids have activities and it is easier for me to grab something on the go or order DoorDash or Uber Eats instead of going into the kitchen and cooking. Okay. So now that we know that you are not going to be slaving over the stove every day. So now what do we need to start doing, or how do we need to start making sure that you can still not have to cook and feed your family? And so the options might be meal planning or meal prepping. It could be having home food boxes delivered, right? But it's bringing awareness and seeing, okay, what little shifts can we make before we just say, okay, I'm going to try to cut this out completely, and understanding the thought process and logic behind it so that you can make these small shifts in a way that is sustainable and a lifestyle shift that it will help you get to your vision in time. A lot of times, especially because we live in this day and age where we love convenience. Like I get mad when my Amazon package doesn't come, like it comes in more than 2 days. And that's just where we are in society. And so we have lost the art of being patient. But when it comes to overhauling your finances, when it comes to creating this lifestyle shift, this financial transformation, when it comes to achieving your vision and your values and all of the things that you see for your life, it is going to take some time. And so we have to be willing to put in the work. So you need to make sure that you are understanding of what are the little things that I can do to fine tune and refine my system and my processes over time. That is your actual money management system, your budget. That's your investments, your savings. That's paying off your debt. How can I make these little changes over time that will give me results? This is also your mindset. How can I continue to grow and stretch my mindset so that I can continue to step into the person that I want to be and get closer to this vision that I saw. I am not a fan of the saying new levels, new devils, but with every time you achieve a goal, with every step you get closer to your vision, it is going to be harder. There are going to be new challenges and new mindset shifts that you are going to have to make that are going to stretch you and challenge you and change you into the person that you need to be in order to get to that vision. It is not going to be easy work. And so you have to be committed to doing the work. That means understanding your commitment costs. For some people, being committed to your goals and achieving your goals will require an actual cost. You will have to pay money. You will have to pay for education. You will have to pay for coaching. You will have to pay for mentorship. You will have to pay for networking and to get into the spaces that you need in order to get to where you want to be. So you might have to actually pay money, but there are other commitment costs that you might need to consider. You might need to consider the energy cost, right? Like your time cost. How much time and energy am I going to have to put into this thing before I start to yield results and start to see my vision come to life? I can tell y'all it's a process, right? It's not an event. We said that already. But I want you to be really, really honest and upfront with yourself about what it is going to cost you. Because one of the things that I see is people go into these things all gung-ho and they get really tired really quickly, not because they don't want their vision, but they didn't really take in consideration the cost and the time commitments and the energy commitments that it was going to take in order for them to do it. And so if you are honest and upfront with yourself about what the commitment costs are going to be, some of the commitment costs for some of you is going to be relational costs. Some of that means that you're not going to be able to hang out with the same people. That means that you're going to have to edit and adjust how you interact with your friends and your family members, because maybe they are not the best influences for your life and where you are trying to go. Maybe that means editing and adding new people to your life that are in alignment. So in 2021, I prayed a prayer for God to start to eliminate some of the people who weren't in alignment with where God was taking me. And then I asked him to add people to my life that would be able to walk with me in this journey, because entrepreneurship is tough, building wealth is tough, life is tough. You need to find your people. And when I tell you that God showed up and showed out in ways that I cannot even fully explain. But it's not that there's any love lost for the people who I don't have the time or don't spend the time with anymore. That doesn't mean that I love them any less. It just means that I am shifted into a different season of my life. And in this year, more specifically, I asked God to give me more millionaire networks, millionaires in my network. And again, God showed up. And the reason why I asked for this is because if I am working to become a millionaire, I'm on my way, y'all. Like, I am on my way. For the past couple of years, we'll get into this in another episode. Like the trajectory was like, whoop, and then it went like, So I am on my way, but it's not at the pace that I want it to go. But because I know that that is where I want to be, I need to make sure that I'm in alignment. I am in the spaces that millionaires are in. I want to see how they think. I want to see how they move. I want to see how they talk. I want to normalize their experiences with mine so that I can make sure that when I get there, I know how to act. And that I can see that, millionaires aren't greedy. Millionaires aren't mean people, right? We on an intellectual level, we know this, but I needed more proof. I really needed to sit and be with them. And this year has been amazing because not only have I been able to share spaces and conversations with millionaire, but they have now started to become part of my circle. They are my people now. And it is an amazing feeling just when you start even to think about like the relationships that you have and think about where you want to go, how intentional and what is that cost that you're going to have to pay in order for you to make those shifts. And are you willing to pay those costs? If you are not, it is completely fine. If you don't want to spend the time to get the education, to get the network, to get the resources and the support that you need and the accountability that you need to reach your goals, it's fine. Say that. It's fine. Like no one's going to be mad. Just be honest with yourself. If you don't want to take the time and the energy and the effort that is going to take in order for you to become the first person in your family to break generational cycles, that's cool. Like, just do you. Like, it's fine. But just be honest with yourself. If you are not willing to edit and to change and evolve and grow into the person that you will see in your vision, then it's okay. Like, you can completely stay where you are. If you love where you are, you want to be where you are, that's fine. Just say that. And so the biggest challenge and issue that I have with this is that I feel like I see a lot of people say they want all of these things, but when it's time for them to do the work, it is really difficult for people to do it. And that is those are some of the reasons why. And so I know this was a lot, but that is the growth framework in a nutshell. That is setting your goals. And again, setting goals on a deeper level, thinking about your life holistically and reverse engineering how your finances support that life, how your finances align with the things that you want. It's bringing recognition to your thought process, your mindset when it comes to your life and your money. What limiting beliefs do you have? What fears are you holding on to? What things do you feel like you need more support and shifts in that will help you get to where you want to be? It's bringing awareness to what is happening in your finances right now. Let's go ahead and pull the credit report so we can see what credit things we have on there. Let's look at our debt balances and figure out how much debt we have. My husband and I did that, and that's how we found out we were $91,000 in debt. But having that awareness gave us the ability to make a plan so that we could get out of it. Because the next line or the next phase is your outline. That's when you start to create your plan and your strategy and all the tasks and things and milestones that you need to accomplish in order to get to that long-term vision. And then lastly, is the work and doing what you need to do to continue your way forward. Again, I'm going to say it one more time that this is a journey. This is a process. This is not an event. We are in it for the long haul. Again, if you're not, it's cool. Just say that. But if you are, then understanding that it is a process and giving yourself the grace and the patience in order to run your race. I hope that this episode was helpful for you. Again, this is going to set the stage for a lot of the conversations that we're having, because I do want you to, again, think about your money holistically and not just in silos of I need to just do this, I need to do that. No, we are thinking about your life as a whole. And again, reverse engineering and figure out how your money can be used as a tool to support that. And so I will see y'all all next week. There's going to be a resource in the show notes that will help you go through some of this work that we just talked about today. And so check it out. Click the link in the show notes so that you can grab yours. And until next time, y'all keep growing.